Hello everyone and welcome back to Baron's Den for another roster change video. This time I'm doing Elven Union. So, cards on the table about Elven Union and myself. I'm not a fan. Not a fan, never have been. And that completely comes from the era of Blood Bowl I started in, which was the mid to late 90s. There were no Elven Union back then. There wasn't even Pro Elves back then. From what I know, I believe they came back as Pro Elves because that's what the Elf team used to be in the original Blood Bowl, I think. But this was a time before they'd developed the Warhammer Fantasy lore of High Elves, Dark Elves, Wood Elves. And so when they brought it back in the mid 90s, which is when I jumped aboard, they'd got the three different flavours of elves. And so in my early days, I didn't play with Elven Union at all. And then when they did come about, I didn't mind them because I'd already got the other three elves, and actually it was quite nice to have a fourth elf team that was a bit different. The reason I resent them a bit is because I kind of feel like they had the spot High Elves should have had all along. They kind of are the passing elf team. They showed up really early on in Blood Bowl 2016. I think they were the fifth or sixth team released. High Elves were in the original rule book for Blood Bowl in the 90s, and I don't know if it was third edition. And so it just feels like the High Elves should have been the passing team. I identify more with the High Elves. Plus, High Elves are my mortal enemies in every setting. So when I played Man of War, my brother had a High Elf fleet. When I played Blood Bowl, I had a friend in the 90s who had a High Elf team. My brother also had a High Elf army in Warhammer Fantasy. And I had a friend down the road who had an Eldar army, which I know aren't High Elves, but let's be honest, they are the closest thing 40k has to High Elves. When we were doing a bit of 40k, not that I played much 40k in the end. So every setting, High Elves have been my enemy, and I do kind of hate them. But you know, when you've got an enemy in the game that you hate, you still want them to be there. Whereas with Elven Union, I just feel like they've taken their spot, so I do resent them a bit. I've told you this ridiculous story because if that affects my judgment on if they've got better or worse, or how good they are, I do apologise. I've also been diced a few times by Elven Union. They're the sort of team that if you can't break their armour because you're rolling terrible and they just never roll a 1, they're going to cause you so many problems. So I think there's a combination of factors. When High Elves are back in the game, I'll probably be easier on them. But anyway, enough of me rambling about my own dislike for this team. And let's actually discuss, because a lot of you are going to really like them. And so let's discuss whether they've got better or worse. So let's start with the Elf Lineman. So the things that stand out here, they've actually got more expensive, only by 5k, and they've gained passing 3+ and Fumblerooski. Now, if you were to say to the average elf player, we're going to increase the cost of your lineman by 5k, but don't worry, we're going to give them a stat up, and we're going to give them a skill. They might be tentatively excited about that, because 5k for a stat up and a skill is pretty good. However, would they want passing on a lineman to be increased? I don't think it's a priority, particularly as, you know, you've already got established throwers on your team. And would you pick from the risk as your skill? Again, probably not. However, that's what's happened. I mean, a skill and a stat up, no matter what it is a bargain for 5,000. But if they are irrelevant, then you just got a more expensive player. So they are still movement 6, strength 3, edge 2+, armor 3+. Passing 3+. They're a really good player, and then you get hit by their armor. They are a weaker side. They're as weak as Skaven and Wood Elves, basically. Which means they do get bullied a fair bit. Obviously, because they've got their edge 2+, they do disengage quite well. General and agility on primary. Not bad having 2 skill trees for linemen that are on primaries. Although a lot of people aren't big fans of the agility tree. For this particular team, it's not bad to be able to dip in and get both block and dodge under normal circumstances. I'll get back to block and dodge later. Strength on secondary, and then Fumblerooski is a really interesting one. So I've seen differing opinions on this. I didn't see it much in Blood Bowl 2020. It was more of in theory, you could do this kind of move, then you'd never see anybody trying it. Well, I wouldn't in tournaments and on Blood Bowl 3 and things like that. But in theory, this could be quite good for the Elf Linemen who actually have it, because I don't think there's a limit, particularly on how many times you can use Fumblerooski. So essentially, you could run a player, put the ball on the floor, another player pick it up, run along, put the ball on the floor, somebody else picks it up, runs up. You know what I mean? You can chain that ball down the pitch. Even if there is a rule that states you can only do that once per turn, you've still got your handoff and your pass, which are separate. So you really can go coast to coast with Elven Union, and that could be quite exciting and a different way of playing. And I really love the fact that they've given this team more of its own identity now, instead of aping off high elves and being the high elf, the throwing team. Even though that's really high elf shtick, they've actually given them something a bit different, and I love that. The question is whether it's any good, and I'll be honest, it's not one I can really rate until we try it. Other people might already be able to theorise in their head whether it's going to be good or bad, but for me, that'd definitely be something I'd want to play before committing to whether it's any good or not. The elf thrower is the same, apart from it's now got Hail Mary pass. So it's movement 6, strength 3, edge 2+, passing 2+, armour 8+, 75k, general agility passing on primary and strength on secondary. When obviously it came with passing, it's now gained Hail Mary pass. So it's a good thrower line of stats. It's not very quick, but it's got the agility 2+ and the passing 2+ that makes it very good at getting out of trouble and then throwing the ball down the line. Its access is fine for what you need. You want passing access, because if you are going to turn it into a good thrower, you can add on a few extra skills that will just top him up. But it can also get general agility, so you could have, again, in the older version of the game, you could have gone block dodge as well to make it a really annoying player to try and take down. I know I keep talking about block and dodge. I haven't forgotten the elephant in the room when it comes to block and dodge, which I'll get to in a bit later. The question is, this one here, Hail Mary pass. Again, it's given that Elven Union a bit of its own identity, because they seem to be now like more the tricks and novelties elf team, where they can do a few things that nobody else can do, almost acrobatic or outrageous, and I like that. The trouble is, Hail Mary pass was awful in the last edition of the game. I'm pretty sure back when I played it, Blood Bowl 2016, and CRP and Living Rulebook and all those editions of the game, Hail Mary pass was a straight roll, wasn't it? I can't remember. Was it 3+? Was it 2+ even? And basically, as long as you didn't roll the 1, you wouldn't fumble it, and then it would scatter from the square as if it was inaccurate. So basically, it could never be accurate, but it would be very unlikely you'd fumble it. And then they changed the ruling of that in 2020 to make it that it's not a straight roll anymore. You'd roll for it like you would be using the range ruler. And so obviously, if you're using Hail Mary pass, it's because you want it at the other end of the pitch. So it would often be in long bomb territory, which is a -3. So even for an elf thrower, a 4+ would be a roll of a 4 would be a fumble. It wouldn't even be inaccurate. It'd just be a straight fumble. You'd need a 5 to make that successful. So again, the last thing you need to be doing is throwing the ball on the floor next to you when you're trying to get it down the other end of the pitch. I'm assuming you're getting it down the other end of the pitch because you really want to score, or you want to get it out of trouble. So throwing it on the floor is not a good idea for that. So it almost became an irrelevant, useless skill, which is really sad, because I used to love Hail Mary pass. It was so much fun. And if people didn't leave players back, you could literally just lob it into an empty square in your opponent's half and try and chase it down later. Now, one thing I will say, because they've taken away wildly inaccurate, and because of the skill access that this elf thrower has, I did consider if you were able to get a passing increase, which is, I think, easier in this edition of the game to get stat increases, that makes you a 1+ passer. Were you also to get safe pass? Is it safe pass or safe throw? The one where you can't fumble it, basically. You don't drop the ball, you hold on to it. And you were able to get Cannoneer, which is a +1 to long pass and long bomb. You could then be doing Hail Mary pass on a 3+ with a reroll. And then if you rolled the fumble, you wouldn't throw it on the floor. And then I thought, oh, that's quite good, because you could perhaps cage up or screen off your thrower, put some players down the line in positions that makes your opponent have to really think about where they're going to put their defenders, and then you see what your opponent does. You could then try and Hail Mary it to one of your players. You could hang on to it to see if you could lull them into a full sense of security. You could throw the ball past your own catchers really deep with the idea that the catchers can dodge away on the next turn and go on from that, particularly if you're playing a low agility team that aren't going to find picking up the ball off the floor as easy as you will. I just thought there's lots of cool things you could do with that. The downside to that is that's, what did I mention? 3 skills. Well, 1 stat up and 2 skills. I suppose the safe pass isn't as important to that little run of skills. But, yeah. So there is interesting things I think you could do with this team. It's just whether they are practical and worth doing. Elf Catcher, very much the same, except for one key thing. They only get 2 of them now. And I feel like we've said this a lot now in a lot of the videos. It's not lost on me that it's going to hurt your team to lose 2 positionals. I don't think even in the Skaven one, I didn't say it's a good thing to lose gutter runners. It's never a good thing. I was just trying to use my own experience to say I think they are still viable with 2. Elf Catchers is a bit harder for me, and I'll explain why. Well, first of all, let's talk about the play. So movement 8, strength 3, edge 2+, passing 4+, armor 8+, 100,000 cost, general agility on primary, and secondary is strength. And then they've got catch, diving catch now, and nerves of steel. So this dude is catching on a 1+ now. An accurate pass on a 1+. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And it'll be a 1+ forever, unless... I can't remember if nerves of steel counts for weather, or is it just tackle zones? I think it's just tackle zones. But even if it's raining, they're catching on a 2+, which is really cool. They are definitely the best catchers in the game, I think, now. If they weren't, I mean, they already probably were. They're just superb. So only having 2 is even more painful then, isn't it? And obviously diving catch does synergise with Hail Mary pass because, you know, it still wasn't likely that the ball's going to come back to your catcher's tackle zone. But if you've got several players in your enemy end zone, you know, you've got a reasonable chance of it landing in someone's tackle zone, and then they can attempt a diving catch. So there's definitely tempting things to try with this Elven Union team. And I'll be honest, I've already told you how I feel about them as a team. I feel more inclined to give them a go now than I've ever done. But that doesn't mean it's good. And the one thing I would say, when I have played Elven Union before, for me, the first things I'm doing is I'm putting dodge on the blitzers and block and dodge on the catchers. And that's 6 blodge pieces. This catcher, there's only 2 of these catchers. And so, and the reason they're better than like your lineman, for example, is because they've got that extra movement and they've got that nerves of steel catch, which means they are a threat at all times unless they're completely surrounded. And that's the great thing about having 4 of them, and then your blitzers as well. You've got so many outs that the opponent can find it difficult to cover them all off. And by only having 2, that's really reduced it. And whereas Skaven can lean into other aspects, such as their devious fouling or the Rat Ogre's strength, I just think Elven Union have less other areas to lean on. So I think it hurts them more than it does hurt the Skaven with their gutter runners. But again, I might be wrong on that, and Elven Union players, experienced players, feel free to comment if you think I'm wrong and that it's a lot more viable than I'm thinking. But I just feel like it hurts them more than it hurts others. Elf Blitzer is just the same. Absolutely the same. Still an absolutely amazing player. I hate playing against them. I absolutely hate playing against them. And that's a credit to them. They're great. A lot of other players I'm not fussed about playing against. There's a few. There's a handful now, isn't there? Amazon, Blocker, Elf, Blitzer. There's just a few that I just find really annoying. And it's because of the sidestep. The sidestep is... And the fact that often someone's plonked dodge on them, so they're blodging sidestep, and they can just get themselves into really awkward positions and make your life really, really difficult. They're expensive, but they're worth it. I really, really rate them as players. And they can be ball carriers, but they can also be blitzers, annoyance pieces. They're just superb. So big fan of those. And they've not changed, so they're still going to be brilliant. The rerolls are 50k. Yes, they can have an Apo, and they're only Elven Kingdoms League. So this is what I was saying about the Wood Elves earlier on. The Wood Elves have got wider access to star players now, whereas the Elven Union are much more streamlined. So, pros and cons. Let's deal with the obvious ones. 2 less catchers, obviously is going to hurt them. Increased cost of linemen. In terms of team building, one of the things that was nice about Elven Union is that I think you could pretty much get everyone you want in a starting 11 at 1 million. I haven't done the maths yet to see if having more expensive linemen makes that more difficult, but I suppose losing 2 catchers should save you some money. So maybe it's not too much of a problem. There's no devious access at all on this team, which is a bit of a shame because they used to have easy access to Sneaky Git and Dirty Player, and that's gone now. Some people may argue that the fouling meta is going to drop away a little bit because Sneaky Git's been nerfed, but I still think you'd like it as an option. So it is going to hurt them that they've got no access to those fouling skills. But this is the big one for me, the elite tax, because 10k extra for those elite skills isn't the end of the world if you're sprinkling it here and there. But like I said earlier, you want your blitz to have dodge, and you want every catcher to have block and dodge. So that's already six elite skills that you want straight away. And I know you could argue that's the case for a lot of teams, but I just think that early on that's going to hurt them and it's going to be expensive. The one thing I would say is, though, they are quite good at generating SPP because they can score and they can pass. So maybe they'll be okay. But I do think that is something to bear in mind anyway, at the very least. The pros, Lineman have Fumblerooski and better passing. Whether you think that's worth it or not, it still makes them better than what they were before. But like I said before, I'd need to run the team to really see if that's actually a viable play. Because lots of people have talked about Fumblerooski. A lot of conversations I've had in tournament halls where people have been going, oh yeah, but if you did Fumblerooski, you could do this. I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's really interesting. And I've never seen anyone do it. Maybe it's because no players start with Fumblerooski, and it's just not something people are tempted enough to try. And obviously in a tournament with such limited skill options, Fumblerooski is not going to get a look in, is it? But now it's on the players. People are going to have to start, well, can't we make use of this skill and make it work? And I do love that. Catchers having diving catches is obviously an improvement. Makes them even better at what they were already good at. And throwers having Hail Mary pass. It is a pro, because it's better to have it than not to have it. They've not been charged for it, so it's a free skill. But out the box, it's not great, because you have to roll a 5+ to not throw it on the floor. And I know they've got pass, but even so, that's really, really a desperate measure there. But, like I said, if you can get a passing increase and maybe get Cannoneer and Safe Pass, that becomes a lot more reliable then, and it might be a different way to play Elven Union. But overall, I've got to say, I think the cons outweigh the pros. And from what I've seen, I'm leaning more on what I've seen for this one. I know I mentioned in one of my earlier videos that it's nice everyone should have their own opinion. Try not to be influenced by others. But it is difficult when you haven't got a lot of your own experience to draw on. And so I have definitely been affected by a general consensus that Elven Union... I mean, some people think they've been absolutely nerfed into the ground. And I don't believe that. I'm more inclined to try them now because I want to see if some of these new skills and ways of playing can actually work. And maybe they can. But until I've seen it, I can't rely on that. So which is why I've unfortunately given Elven Union a down. I think they have come out of the changes a little bit worse than they were. But like I said, that's still probably more positive than a lot of people are being. So, so I've slotted Elven Union in there. Still think they've come out of this better than humans, but perhaps not as much as Khorne and Dwarves. And look here, our winners and losers board is starting to stack up now. We're getting through the teams. What I'm going to do, I think, when I get through all the teams, I'll do a roundup video and I will look at these because now I've done other teams. I'm now thinking, and I know I mentioned this in the last one, I should move Necromantic Horror back into this column now because whilst theirs is good, I don't think it's so good that it's better than everyone else's changes. And I hadn't considered the break tackle when I did Amazons. And so actually I think I need to move Amazons into this bracket as well. So what we'll do is we'll move teams around according to how we feel when we've gone through it all. Because remember, when I first did the first one, which I think was Dwarfs, no, it was Necromantic Horror, wasn't it? I hadn't even seen all the leaked rules by then. I'd seen most of them, but for example, break tackle I didn't find out about until a couple of days ago, and that's huge for Amazon blockers who are strength 4, so +2 to their dodging. And they've got defensive, so they can skip into cages and switch off guards, and they've got strength 4. Once you put guard on them as well, they're going to be amazing. So anyway, that's it for me from Elven Union. I don't think they're a total disaster. So if you are a fan, please comment because you can help with my education on Elven Union by letting me know what you think about some of these things. I'm not saying that the whole Fumblerooski Hail Mary pass diving catch setup is a good thing. What I'm saying is it's an interesting, different way to play, and I'm more inclined to try them now than I ever have been. So that says something at least. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me for this video, and I really appreciate all the likes and subscribes that people have been giving. It's been wonderful the last few days, so thank you very much for those and keep them coming, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you very much. Bye for now.